You know the vibes. Welcome back to another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast brought to you by NBA 2K25. It is myself, Mo Mooncey. Today, BJ Armstrong is at the Staples Center, aka Crypto Arena. I know the Lakers fans get mad when I don't call it the Crypto, but to me, it is and forever will be the Staples Center. Rest in peace, Kobe Bryant. But I am honored to be joined by my brother, my big brother, Mr. CT, one of the finest basketball trainers on planet Earth right now. CT, how you been keeping? A lot of the older fans of the show will remember you from last year's playoffs. Didn't hear from you much this season on the show because I know you've been busy working, but
Yeah,
what's new with you? What's good with you, my brother?
bro. Ain't nothing new under the sun. Just breathing in, breathing out, and doing a whole lot of basketball.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The playoffs are here. They're in full force. Obviously, you spend a lot of time in Indiana. You watch a lot of the Pacers, but they picked up another win, going two up on the Milwaukee Bucks, 123 to 115 tonight to take care of business at home before they head out on the road to Milwaukee. And Tyrese Halliburton, Damian Lillard anticipated this game highly because of the trash talk between the two. Dame Lillard back on the court, even though he had blood clots. I don't know how he was cleared to play, but shout out to Dame for getting back to it. The
Yeah,
Pacers had six players in double figures, all five of their starters, plus Benedict Mathurin coming off the bench to overpower a 34-point effort from Giannis, who also grabbed 18 boards and dished out seven dimes in a crazy stat line, and also 28 points off the bench from Bobby, who made his way back to the team after his, let's say, issues earlier this season. But
yeah.
what jumped out to you in this one, CT?
Pacers took care of business, and I think I texted you earlier. I gave up on the Bucks right before All Star Weekend. I just something's been funky with them all season, and Giannis is Giannis, and everybody else kind of shows up sometimes, and not everybody shows up all the time. So kind of as expected. That series is going as expected right now.
Absolutely. I think a big issue here for the Bucks is, they've got Bobby coming off the bench and KPJ's been okay for them. But the depth in comparison to Indiana, when you got Obi Toppin, Benedict Mathurin, TJ McConnell all coming off the bench, the depth really shone through in this one. And, the pace at which the Pacers like to play at, no pun intended, when you've got guys that can just get out there and run and they all play under the same philosophy, it's easy for them to rotate the minutes, rotate the lineups that they've got going on. Whereas for the Bucks, it's a lot of reliance on Giannis
Yeah.
Antetokounmpo. And, especially on the defensive side of the ball, I tweeted about this earlier. Brook Lopez is fantastic. Okay, there was a stretch in this game where the Bucks actually made it close near the end, and we had a little game on our hands for the last few minutes with Brook
Mm-hmm.
Lopez blocking shots on multiple consecutive possessions. But I worry about the Bucks because Brook Lopez at 37 years old, he's had numerous injuries over the last few years. They don't seem to have a plan for when he ages out. Obviously the Celtics have a similar situation with Al Horford. However, that's why they went and got Porzingis, and if he can get healthy, he can kind of try and bridge that gap, and they've got depth for their bigs. But the Bucks don't really seem to have a shot blocking presence. They've got Jericho Sims, who got 8 minutes in the game tonight. But outside of that, they don't really have any interior defensive presence outside of Brook Lopez. So when he's not on the court, and tonight he only played 16 minutes, when he's not on the court, that's a problem defensively. And given that your perimeter defense with Damian Lillard at the forefront of that perimeter defense is giving up easy transition, easy penetration to the hoop, it's not the best recipe. There's only so much Giannis can do. I wanted to give out a shout out to Kyle Kuzma, who finally registered some stats in the series. It only took him kind of a
Oh,
game
he played
and a
tonight.
little bit. Yeah, he played. He got 12 minutes in 12 points in 31 minutes. 5 of 15, 5 of 10 from the
Oh,
field,
I
zero
missed.
from three from behind the arc. Not an ideal fit. I feel for the Bucks fans because you look at some of these games and you think, if we still had Chris Middleton and if he was healthy,
Mm,
I understand the trade from a financial implication and they were able to get other pieces and have a little bit more flexibility with the roster. But when you have someone like Chris Middleton who can be that secondary scorer off Giannis Antetokounmpo, I'm not putting too much emphasis on Dame Lillard. It's his first game back from injury here, so it'd be unfair to criticize him. However, having someone like Chris Middleton who can go out and self-create and get you buckets in the half court compared to a Kyle Kuzma who really seems to be in his head after a disappointing game one. I'm thinking he started this game by missing two layups.
yeah,
And you could see
yeah.
he's really having a mental toll on. And this is a player who won a championship with the Lakers in the bubble. So how do they fix this Kyle Kuzma issue that they've got going on over here? Because Torian Prince as well, only 6 points in their starting lineup.
That's my point. They didn't plan for the phase out of getting older. and not picking up the right pieces. I mean, Kuzma is a nice piece he if he shows up to play. Kevin Porter Jr. is probably a piece they should invest more in. He's the youth, the athlete. He's a gamer if he wants to be, but I just don't see it past Giannis. They had a plan to go anywhere in the playoffs. They're going to mess around and get swept, and it's all on roster moves.
Yeah, well, a big part of playoff series is kind of the momentum, right? And it looked that towards the end of the game, the Bucks found something to kind of make it a little bit closer than it had been throughout the course of the game. Do you think that gives them any hope in going back home and trying to win game three? Because if you lose game three, you're down 3-0 and it's pretty much a wrap.
Yeah, no, the Pacers are known to take the pedal off the gas, get bored, let teams come back because they're not that great at defense. They just have to play a good pace where they can make up that deficiency. So it's more of if the Pacers do what they're supposed to do, this series is over.
And I want to shout out to Andrew Nemhard because he seems to be a player that raises his game when the postseason comes around. He goes out there, he plays hard, he's undersized, but plays great defense. And on the offense, went 6 of 10 from the field, 3 of 5 from downtown on his way to 17 points, 6 assists as well. But he's just one of those guys who kind of steps up to the moment rather than backs down from it, which is a very valuable trait to have in the NBA. Tyrese Halliburton, for all of his trash talking, he delivered on the results. You know, him and Dame were going back and forth after game one, and he put his money where his mouth was. But we're going to see in game two, the other game that we had tonight, the Grizzlies and the OKC Thunder. I don't think there's too much to talk about here. I mean, I had both those games on at the same time. I had them both on the screen, but I barely checked that because it's like the OKC defense is just so good. They turn that defense into easy buckets in transition, and before you know it, you're down 20 points. But shout out to Memphis, it wasn't a 50-point blowout tonight. They lost 118-99. I really don't know what's going on over there in Memphis. Ja Morant taking 25 shots and you're 7 foot, whatever, Zach Edey only getting 3 shots. I don't know if that's a great recipe, especially against a team who has great bigs. You want to try and get your big man touches to get the other team's big in some sort of foul trouble. The front court of the OKC Thunder picked up 1 foul between them in this game. That's Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. Shai Alexander put up 29 shots in this one, trying to shake off some of the rust that we saw in game one. He finished with 27 points on 29 shots, which is not great, but this is why you play hard in the regular season to go and get that number 1 seed so you get the easiest matchup in the first round. And I was thinking about this. It's like, okay, the OKC Thunder are going to walk down the Grizzlies in 4 games and then probably have a week off to rest while the Nuggets and the Clippers have a war that may go to 7 games because both of those games, the first one went to overtime, the second one went down to the wire, and then they're going to be well rested and fresh to take on whoever can survive that battle over there. And people talk about the regular season not being entertaining and so on and so forth, but this is why you play so hard in the regular season. And credit to the OKC Thunder and every player on their roster, the coaching staff, the organization, because this is what you play for. You want the number 1 seed. You want the home court advantage. You want the easy 8 seed matchup in the first round. You want to be able to take on the 4th or the 5th seed in the second round because you know that's going to be a close series. So, Shai struggling a little bit from the field, 3 of 10 from downtown, but I've got no doubt in my mind that he will, as the series progresses, he's got 2 more games to find his rhythm again and then be poised and ready for the next one because they've had a week off in the lead up to this. From your perspective of working with NBA guys and training them, how important is the kind of keeping the momentum going in comparison to having time off to rest and that rust buildup that you may get from just sitting at home?
I think that comes to the maturity and the professionalism of players keeping their mind right while they got that much time off and not being distracted. This team has shown all season that they are legit, and their actually goal in mind is to contest and contend and try to win this thing. And whether Shai is leading the charge, which most of the time he usually is and does a great job at it, and he's probably going to end up with MVP, they can ball. I mean, they got a lot of pieces, a lot of oomph to what they bring on the court, and it's scary because Memphis isn't that bad a team, and they have a superstar. Zach Edey, shout out to him, boiler up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They got no answer for what OKC is going to bring, and not a lot of teams do in a 7 game series. The more rest OKC gets, the more focus I think they're on that end game, that championship run is starting to get more real to them, and you're going to see them. You even see like their post game interviews. They used to be the silly, just all the antics behind the towels laying
Yeah,
across.
shout out to Nick Jello.
Yeah, and now they're they're taking it back to a little bit more serious, letting whoever is on the call or getting the interview be interviewed, and you can see them tightening the screws a little bit. So it's going to hurt the rest of the Western Conference for them to get more rest, truthfully.
For the Memphis Grizzlies, Jaren Jackson Jr. bounced back from a terrible game one. He put up 26. Desmond Bane gave them 19. And Santi Aldama gave them double digits off the bench. But you look at this OKC team, and the thing I love most about it is everyone on the roster can guard. There's no
Mm.
weakness defensively. And you got guys like Alex Caruso, who almost every other team in the NBA would kill to have on their roster. You got Alex Caruso coming off the bench and giving you 20 minutes. That's a championship caliber player who can shoot the ball, play insanely good defense. And it's to me, it's like last year's Celtics. I feel like
Mm.
last year, everyone overthought the fact that the Celtics were so dominant in the regular season. They were like, oh, there's no way they can do this in the playoffs. And then every series, people are like, oh, this team's going to give them trouble. We got to the finals, and all these fools in the media are talking about, oh, Dallas is their first tough opponent. Dallas is going to win. Maybe these teams are just that good. This OKC team is historically that good. And I feel like everyone may have overthought the fact that they might just walk their way to a championship like the Celtics did last season. And I mean, it's unfolding right in front of our eyes. But the other teams in the Western Conference going to give them some trouble potentially. The Lakers and the Minnesota Timberwolves is kind of the main event. I said on Twitter earlier, I was like, tonight's games and a couple of these nights, it's like the Eastern Conference games are the undercard. Not even just the Eastern Conference. Like tonight's games are like the undercard in a
Yes,
boxing match. So
for
you got
sure.
the Pacers and Bucks. You got the Grizzlies and the Thunder. That's the undercard. No one's really paying attention. You kind of got it on in the background while everyone's getting food, having a drink, and then you got the main event that everyone sits down and watches. Heavyweight battle between the Timberwolves and the Lakers tonight. The Lakers came away with a 94-85 win in a very interesting game because the Lakers looked like a different team in game two compared to the team they were in game one. They came out of the gate so locked in defensively. And I want to give a shout out here to Luka Doncic
Mm.
because there are some people out there, some people in Dallas, some people called Nico Harrison who say defense wins championships and they may have moved on Luka because he doesn't play a lot of defense, but tonight he did. He held his own on the defensive end. The entire Lakers team did, and they really shut down the Timberwolves offense. Timberwolves offense was absolutely horrible in this one. Luka finished with a 31-point triple double. Oh, not quite a triple double. It was 12 rebounds and 9 assists.
Yeah.
LeBron gave them 21. Austin Reeves gave them 16. Rui Hachimura gave them 11. Wasn't a whole lot of scoring in this one. For the Timberwolves, Ant-Man gave them 25. Julius Randle gave them 27, but there really wasn't much else happening. And I think there are a couple factors at play here, right?
Mm.
Game one, the Timberwolves did such a good job of getting out and running in transition. And a lot of those wide open 3 pointers for the Timberwolves came off Laker misses, and they were getting out, running, hitting the corners, and they ended up with 27 wide open threes. That's not total 3 pointers. That's wide open 3 pointers. Tonight
Right.
they had 25 total 3 pointers,
Yeah.
and they were not knocking them down. They went 5 of 25. And I think a part of this, I want to get your take on it, is the foul trouble that they got into early on in the game. Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo.
Mm.
Three of their top five rated lineups feature Naz Reid and Dante DiVincenzo, but they picked up 3 fouls early in this game. So the usual substitution patterns and the rotation patterns were kind of thrown off in this one. The players weren't able to catch their rhythm, and the Timberwolves spent a lot of time complaining about foul calls. That to me is kind of why the offense was so bad. They weren't playing how they did in game one and collapsing the defense, spraying the ball out, and they couldn't get it going. Uh, from a player's perspective and the guys that you work with, How important is that rhythm? When they're not getting their usual rotation pattern, when they're in early foul trouble, they got to sit for extended stretches. How important is that rhythm when it comes to shooting the basketball?
The rhythm is just the whole game. I mean, it's not just the offensive side. It's like if you're in foul trouble, you can't play the defense that you need to play in a playoff setting. And so that's the case from tonight in game one. Game one, Minnesota was more physical. They were hitting shots. Game two, Lakers were more physical, making more plays. Minnesota just could hit shots. And then the foul trouble did play a factor. It took literally their team off the court. So they had to play Shannon.
Yeah,
With,
they had to draw for Terrence Shannon Jr. off the bench, getting some minutes. I think another reason why the Timberwolves couldn't get out and run in transition is because they were taking the ball out of their basket a lot early on in this game. In the first half, the Lakers took 12 shots in the paint and made all 12 of them.
yeah,
So it's hard to get out and run. And what's crazy to me is I think the first 63 possessions of this game, there were 22 fouls called. It was the refs have done such a good job so far in the playoffs of letting the players play and playing tough physical basketball.
mm,
But this game between the Lakers and the Timberwolves, I'm not saying the Lakers won because of the refs. I'm not saying that. I'm saying on both sides, the referees were making so many terrible calls. And and what's insane to me is they made some obviously wrong calls. Chris Finch had like two possessions in a row where he had to use his challenge.
yes,
He wins his challenge both times and is rewarded with no more challenges left for the rest of the game.
yeah,
So I don't understand the logic in if you win a challenge, you lose your challenge because you should be able to keep it because the refs doing it wrong. In the first 16 minutes of this game, there were 19 fouls called.
yes.
The refs set the tone early. That's not what we want to see. The playoffs have been so good so far because the refs have let them play. Tonight was quite the opposite. When you're looking at this series, though, the Lakers made their adjustment on the defensive end. They also made an adjustment on the offensive end. The offense in this one to start the game was so much more structured than what it was
Yeah,
in game one. In
for
game
sure.
one, it was a lot of freestyle. Lucas got the ball. He's going to just try and run a pick and roll and then score in isolation. But to start this game, the Lakers were running a lot of sets involving their best three players in Luka, LeBron, and Reeves. So they made their adjustments on offense and defense. What adjustments are the Timberwolves going to make headed into game three back in Minnesota?
Better figure out how they stop Rudy Gobert from being targeted.
You know what though, CT? That's interesting to me because I was watching this and I think you live with it.
Mm,
Because in the fourth quarter of this game, the Lakers went on a stretch where they didn't score for about 5 minutes because they kept targeting Rudy Gobert, and it took the Lakers from the flow of the offense that we saw in the first quarter where they were running their sets and getting into their stuff. And in the fourth quarter, for that stretch where they weren't scoring, it's kind of like everyone was trying to get a highlight on crossing over Rudy Gobert, and they weren't really in the flow of the offense. So I think if you're the
yeah,
Timberwolves, you could kind of live with Rudy being on the island. Yeah, it might look like he's making a fool of himself because he's big and lanky and he can't guard on the
mm,
perimeter. But the results actually in the fourth quarter were what got the Timberwolves from a 25-point deficit to a single-digit game.
yeah, but it's fool's gold because they weren't actually scoring at some point, targeting him. When they do target him and actually score, 80% of the time, this next game, game three, is going to be bad on the Timberwolves because that's Luka, who's got a personal vendetta against Rudy Gobert for some reason anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm with you, but it's just you got to minimize the plan of attack of the Lakers, and that's obviously their plan of attack. And Minnesota has enough pieces to get him off of that attack, that primary attack. And most of this, I would say, tonight is Ant. This is another part of his maturation is he's got to read the room and he's got to take over the game. He's got to be the vocal leader, the demonstrative all-star that he is, and not in moments, but like literally when you go down 15 in a playoff game, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
You got to fight so hard to come back, and then he's good enough, but it's like you can't touch the ball in one of 5 possessions. You can't They have minimal shots when you're down 15, not a player of his caliber.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that the Lakers wanted to minimize from Anthony Edwards was his playmaking. He had 9 assists in game one. He had zero tonight. They
Yes.
took away his passing. The Lakers, like I said, they brought the energy on defense to the point where they were doing great jobs, rotating on the back line, closing out to the shooters. Even when the Timberwolves made the extra pass, they were there and they were ready. So, the playoffs are like a game of chess. The Lakers have made their adjustment and it worked. They managed to hold on, even though there was a stretch in the fourth quarter where, Julius Randle made a bucket and hit LeBron on the way down, which they called it as an offensive foul, but the foul happened after the bucket had been made, so the bucket should have counted, and that would have cut the lead down to single digits with 5 minutes to go, and it kind of changed the flow of the game, right?
Yes.
But the Lakers made their adjustments and it worked. Now the ball is back in the court of the Timberwolves, and they can make their adjustments going ahead. And I anticipate game three being significantly different if they can stay out of that early foul trouble, because that's what gave them some trouble. But shout out to Julius Randle, though, because I don't know why Ant wasn't getting too many touches early on in this one, but Julius
Mhm.
Randle was kind of the cog that was making the offense move, and he was trying to do his thing. He was getting it going. He went 9 of 17 from the field, which is not terrible. He shot 53% from the field. Um, but Julius Randle played well. It's just the guys who usually make shots didn't make their shots tonight, right?
Yeah.
Mike Conley, 0 from 3 from downtown. Ant Edwards, 2 of 8 from downtown, and he shot 40% on the season. Dante DiVincenzo, 0 of 2. Naz Reid, 1 of 3. Nikhil Alexander Walker, 0 of 2. You just didn't get the 3-point shot falling, which we know they've relied on throughout the course of this season. So it's going to be very interesting going into this one. But let me ask you this, because in a lot of your training, I know you put a big emphasis on the conditioning of the body and making sure players are physically ready, right? LeBron James was giving maximum effort on defense tonight. It was fantastic to
Mm.
see. Luka Doncic giving maximum efforts on defense. Can the Lakers sustain this for the course of a 7 game series and beyond? Because we saw in the NBA Finals last year, for example, we saw one game of Luka playing great defense, but the game after he was back to his usual
Yeah.
non-defensive self. Can you see the Lakers sustaining this for the rest of the series and beyond?
No, because that's not who Luca is. He'll give you some effort every now and then. And LeBron, as great as he is, uh, I won't say Father Time is catching up, but you can. It's going to be hard for him to sustain because during the season he was playing that hard until he took his break. So it's a lot. I mean, it just at some point you're waiting on the fall off and the drop off. It's not going to happen with LeBron. It's going to happen with Luca, not giving the effort on defense, and that's the scary part for when Ant matches Julius Randle's energy of playing to win and playing to compete at the highest level with all the ability. That's when the Lakers are going to be in trouble again.
Yeah, the Lakers, I think they did a good job of rim protection by committee tonight. Guys like Rui Hachimura, guys like Dorian Finney-Smith, Jared Vanderbilt, LeBron, because Jackson Hayes, once again, like first game, he played 8 minutes. Tonight, he played 9 minutes, 5 fouls in 9 minutes. Do they need to find a way to keep him on the floor as kind of their only big, or do you think they can get away with winning 3 more games in this series without having a true center out there?
Luca and LeBron are so good; they can get away with it. But they're going to need Luca being Luca and LeBron doing what LeBron does. So, but you got two of the best in the business. That's you can lose on the back end with those two running. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and then
Fine.
if you're the Timberwolves though, because the Lakers are going small, at some point do you try and match that and take Rudy off the floor and maybe play with Nas at the 5 and Julius at the 4 or go even smaller than that? Or do you try and keep your size advantage? Because game one, they did a great job on the offensive glass. It didn't feel like they did that tonight. And in the rebounding battle, they got out rebounded tonight. They picked up 34 boards. The Lakers picked up 41. So even though the Lakers are playing small ball, they were bringing the effort and energy on the glass, which, if you're not getting the rebounds as a bigger team, then why are you playing your big guys?
And that's where I think the T Wolves need to go to attacking Austin Reeves for one,
Mm.
attacking Luca for two, and there's their advantage is Luca's not trying to play all that defense. Austin Reeves can't play all that defense. So You don't need Rudy out there getting attacked on this end and then not offering much offensively anyway.
Yeah,
So
they don't look for him very often. If I think he took 5 shots in the game tonight, he's kind
if
of
at all,
a
but
last resort will throw the ball up for a lob for the
yeah,
Knicks. Like, they don't
yeah,
look for him.
yeah, yeah.
Um, the thing that the Lakers do that was fantastic, and JJ Redick and his staff have done a great job on this, is if you look at how their defense is set up, whenever Anthony Edwards gets the ball, they're throwing two defenders at him, or whenever he's trying to drive, they've always got the help defenders there nice and early to stop
Mhm.
what he's doing. They've done a great job schematically, and it didn't work in game one because the defense was collapsing too much, but it did work tonight because they're getting the extra efforts of the closeouts and so on and so forth. I want to see if they can take that show on the road when you don't have the home crowd behind you, when you don't have maybe you don't have the Timberwolves players in foul trouble that they're kind of frustrated and arguing with the referees.
That part. I think the foul trouble changed the whole game. I mean, first quarter started off great for the Lakers, but the worst way possible for the Timberwolves.
Hmm.
So, and it's just hard when like Dante is a difference maker. He's a game winning player, game winning plays, and you lose that early on. You lose a lot of that with four guys, 3 fouls in the first half,
Hmm.
four fouls even. So it's like, yeah, that kind of sucked to have to grind through the second half knowing that they can't play how they really want to play. And they got bullied tonight, basically.
Yeah, and this is why it's important to watch the games as well because the Timberwolves actually shot more free throws than the Lakers did tonight. However, it was kind of the timing of these foul calls that the refs set the tone early for the Timberwolves that they can't be physical and play the defense that they want to play. And after watching maybe the Pistons Knicks game yesterday or the Rockets game the day before, you're geared up and it's the playoffs and you're ready to play hard fought basketball. And then all of a sudden, 3 fouls early, you're sat on the bench, you come back in the game, and now you got to play a whole second half wary about, okay, now I've picked up my fourth foul. All right, now Julius Randle and Jaden McDaniels finished with 5 fouls. DiVincenzo and Naz Reid both finished with 4 fouls each. You can't play that defense in the same way. You can't make those efforts. So I'm going to be very interested to see if this series starts being officiated in the way that all the other series that we've seen so far have been officiated. Because Lakers fans always seem, they always feel like they're being persecuted by the referees, but
Well,
we all know
Luca,
what it really is.
he talks to the refs the whole game
He
himself.
talks to the refs more than Draymond Green. I don't think there's a player in the league, and I love Luka Doncic, but I don't think there's anyone that argues with the refs and believes that they've got fouled on every single possession more than Luka Doncic does.
Literally every possession, and it's too bad because he's too good a player for All right, easy cheesy. Like not everything's a foul. Just play. Play. You're too good to have that look every play.
Hmm. But this is when I knew the Timberwolves had lost this game is early on. I think they were down 10 or something, and there was back-to-back possessions where Randall and Naz Reid were complaining to the refs and not getting back on defense. And I thought,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
what the Lakers were doing in game one, and that's why they lost. And now you guys are doing it in game two. No, you got the win in game one. If you come in tonight and you take a 2-0 advantage on the road, you could
Mm.
have this team lined up for a sweep. You don't want to give them the confidence to get back into the series. But it looked like to me, all right, you guys went out in LA last night, huh? Is that what you guys were doing? Because the
Yeah.
way they started this and they got into that hole early, if they didn't go down by so much so early, they could have easily come out and won this game. And by the time they clawed their way back into it, cut it to like a 9 point deficit in the fourth quarter, there was not enough time left on the clock to get the job done. And the game was already done after the first quarter. So we're gonna have to see what happens in game number three. But CT, let's look ahead to tonight's matchups. The Orlando Magic and the Boston Celtics. Jason Tatum, I don't believe is going to play because of the wrist injury he picked up.
Oh,
Do you see the Orlando Magic surprising everyone and winning game two in Boston?
you could hope, but they just don't have enough shooting to match all the shooters the Celtics do have.
Mm,
It's really tough. Uh, Paolo likes to take the 2 point field goals, which it's a good deal when he's hitting them. But Boston, they chuck up 43s a night.
hmm hmm
And that's the worst case scenario for what Orlando's looking at, trying to outscore them. And Orlando has been a really good defensive team this year. Defensive rebounding, guarding the three, but the Celtics offer just a different way, and it's very hard. With Tatum down, they don't skip a beat because they have so much shooting that it's really hard to match.
Yeah, I don't know though. Like, I think KCP has really struggled with the Magic this year. And I think he's overdue for a game. And the kind of little trash talk that was going on after he was the one who injured Tatum, I think he's kind of overdue for a little bit of an explosion from behind the arc himself. And with Tatum out and Jaylen Brown, his knee is clearly still troubling him, even though he says he's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think maybe Orlando could steal this one. I think,
Orlando, Orlando will get one out of this season. I won't be surprised if it's within these next two games, but it's a 7 game series. And even with Tatum out, Brown injured, again, they have a lot of shooting that Orlando frankly doesn't have. I mean,
yep.
it's a struggle for Orlando, 6 minutes at a time in some games, most games, to score.
Yeah, well, shout out to Payne Pritchard, sixth man of the year.
Hey, there you
Shout
go.
out to Payne Pritchard. He's going to have a big game tonight. The Miami Heat and the Cleveland Cavaliers have their game too. Do you see the Miami Heat being able to steal one in Cleveland? Because they did have some stretches in game one where they looked kind of threatening, but this Cavs team, like when you get a contribution like what Ty Jerome had, what, 28 points in game one, when you get a contribution like that off the bench, it's pretty hard to beat teams, but you can't rely on those bench contributions to that level. Do you see any
Uh,
way that Cleveland drop game two at home? Because I can't really see it happening.
the Cavs are real, just like OKC's real. They're just literally the Eastern Conference version of what OKC's doing to the Western Conference.
Mm-hmm.
They're tough and they're real, and I think they're gaining the belief factor as they've entered the playoffs and now going through it with Miami. I mean, that's a sweet deal for them to be playing Miami.
Yeah, 10th seed Miami Heat.
Yeah.
It's the
So,
first time you're playing a 10th seed in the
yeah.
playoffs. But
It's
that's why you play for the one seed.
Yep. Yep. So I think they're in the driver's seat. I think Miami, they could get one. Bam's got to show up and stay consistent. And Hero is just got to be a hero,
Mm-hmm.
basically. But I don't see Miami doing much more than one game. They're susceptible of getting swept, especially if Cleveland sees that and values some time off.
Mm. Well, it's like tonight. You've got the two undercards and then the main event. The Houston Rockets and the Golden
Yeah.
State Warriors after an epic game one.
Mm.
Rockets losing at home. Can they avoid losing the first two at home in what promises to be a physical? But I hope it's not the same refs from the Laker game tonight.
Check the board. Jeez.
Can they bounce back and win game number two of this series?
I think the Rockets and Detroit have the same problem. They have too many young guys that don't quite get the level of just professionalism, the level of play it takes to win a playoff series, let alone a playoff game. So that, and then the fact that the Rockets struggle to score too, which if you allow Steph Curry to do what Steph does, and then the X factor for Golden State has been Jimmy Buckets. Like he's for real, that guy. And he's the perfect insert for what Golden State needed. They're not even playing Kuminga.
Yeah, Kuminga has been sent to the bench. I don't know if we're going to see much of Kuminga. Maybe he's on another team next season. Steve Kerr's clearly not a fan.
Kind
So,
of looks like it, right?
but it's working for them, right? I think Houston, as you said, they really struggled to score, especially in the half court. So much of their offense is predicated on their defense being able to get out and run. But in the
Yep.
playoffs, game slows down. It's the same cliches every year. They've got to find something in the half court. And if Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green have another terrible performance like they did in game one, it's going to be very difficult for them to compete in this series. However, the physicality that their defense offers with guys like Amon Thompson, Tari Easton, so on and so forth, it gives you a chance on a nightly basis. It gives you a chance. I want to see them finding a way to score in that half court.
Mm.
Maybe they've got to go to Şengün even more than they did in game one. Maybe he's the answer because the Warriors don't have the size. Draymond Green is one of the best defenders we've ever seen. But if you can get Draymond Green in early foul trouble, now that shifts the momentum of the game because he's such a core part of that Golden State defense. If you can do a good job on a Gary Payton, who gave you a great contribution in game one, and kind
Hmm.
of disrupt what he's doing, because Golden State got Steph Curry, right? And there's no solution to Steph Curry. We saw the Rockets do that in the game in the regular season. Maybe they
Right.
showed their hand a little too early, but
Yeah.
I'm not mad at that. But now, even if you do lock up Steph, Jimmy Butler, he takes his game to another notch in the playoffs. You've got two guys you need to worry about. When you're going against the Houston Rockets, okay, you're worried about Şengün scoring, but you're not really worried about any of the other guys on the roster going off and scoring 20, 30 points against you. So it's going to be an interesting one. I think Houston have to get this one. If they don't get this, then they're
They
going to go
must.
to they're getting swept out of here. I think Houston have to win this game. So
Yes.
I might pick them because it's a must. I don't usually call a game two a must win, but for the Houston Rockets, this is a must win game.
My man, FVV, Steady Freddy.
Mm-hmm.
I, I,
Mm-hmm.
I believe in this dude. I always have, always will. He won't let them lose game two.
He's a champion. He's been there. He's done it against Stephen Curry, and he's got to figure out a way. But CT, appreciate you dropping by, man. It's good to have you
Hey,
back on the show. It's always a pleasure.
my man,
Hopefully, we get you back on throughout the rest of the course of the playoffs.
let
And
me
yeah,
know.
keep
I'm
it
around
rolling.
somewhere.
Keep it rolling. Where can the people find you? Where can the people find you?
I'm on Instagram, the number one world dominator.
Yes, sir.
You can
Yes,
find me
sir.
on Instagram, but I'm in the gym. You know,
That's it. Doing the real work. Doing the real work, man.
doing the
We love
work.
it. We appreciate you. You guys who are listening, make sure you go check out what CT is doing. And he'll be back on the show before you know he's part of the family over here. So we're gonna
Hey,
keep it rolling. Subscribe to the show, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And then until next time, you guys know what it is. Get buckets.